Good day, my dear students. In this video, I will be discussing to you chapter 5, which talks about speaking skills or developing speaking skill. It's very important that we develop our speaking skill because it is one of the most needed skill in our daily lives. Say for example, when we are communicating, when we are sharing our opinion, when we want to convey our ideas, speaking skill is very significant. And under this chapter, we have series of lessons. The first one would be conversation. So, what is conversation? It says here, conversation is one of the most familiar and direct methods for communicating. So, when we say most familiar, it is known by everyone, it is common to everyone. And when we say direct methods, there are only few rules governing it. Next one would be conversation is an interactive communication of at least two people talking together. Take note of the word interactive communication. It means there is an exchange of information. So, what is not an example of conversation? So, when you pass by a friend, you said, hey, hi, and then he responded, hello. That is not an example of a conversation. Another thing, if you are working in a company and the boss calls you inside his office to finish something, that is not also a conversation. Take note that conversation follow rules of etiquette because conversations are social interactions and therefore depend on social convention. It also says here that it includes a kind of speech that happens informally and equally for the purpose of establishing and maintaining social ties or simply for companionship. So, the purpose of conversation is to establish and maintain social ties. Now, there are two types of conversation. We have the transactional conversation and the social conversation. What's the difference? When we say transactional conversation, I included this in your examination. Kapag transactional, you have a realistic goal. Take note of that, realistic goal. Kapag social conversation naman, social conversation's goal is not primarily to accomplish a task. Instead, the purpose is to build and maintain relations. So, yung una kanina, meron kang realistic goal. Yung social conversation, walang masyadong strict na goals. Now, there are 5 characteristics of conversation. This is from Chandler 2017. Number 1, there is be fully present in the conversation. So, when we say be fully present, ibig sabihin you should be physically and mentally present in the moment. So, you should be listening and at the same time, you should be you should be there trying to comprehend what the person you're talking to is saying. Number 2 is realize and vocalize the things you agree on. So it would not be easy to find common ground when you talk and focus on the things you disagree about. But if you take a step back, you realize that despite your differences, you actually agree about more things that you disagree about. So it means that, say for example, you disagree with the idea at hand, of course, you should say no. Do not be afraid to say no, and do not also be afraid to say yes whenever you agree on the matters at hand. Next, we have seek understanding more than being right. So, what about this? It says here no one wins if both individuals are more concerned about being right than they are understanding one another. So sometimes being involved in a conversation is not always proving to the person you are right or you are accurate about a thing, about an information. Sometimes you need to seek understanding. Next, we have honor the other person. So it's just saying you respect the person you are talking to. So honor and respect are two connected concepts. Next, we have the last one, number 5, commit to communicate with kindness. So, kindness is more than being nice to other person's point of view. So, when we say commit to communicate with kindness, even if you have contradicting ideas about a certain topic, you should still be kind to that person and do not argue with him or her just because you have different perspective about a certain matter. Next, how do we have a great conversation? How do we start a conversation? So the first one here is perfect your timing. Timing is the key to starting a great conversation. So say for example, merong patay tapos doon ka pumunta para umutang, of course that is not a perfect timing. So you perfect your timing by looking at the situation, looking at the emotions, you schedule your talk. If it's serious, then look for a serious moment. Then if it's entertaining, you look for an entertaining moment. Next would be comment on your surroundings. So sometimes nahiya tayo to start a conversation, nahiya tayo what do we say first. So usually ang ginagawa ay to give comment on the surroundings, if there are changes, may mga halaman, may mga tinanim, or whatever that you wish to give comments. Next, we have remember people. Okay. So, in starting a conversation, whether you work for a large company or simply see a lot of people in your neighborhood or at least child's school, it can be difficult to put the right face with the right name. But take note, one of the sweetest word that a person can hear is you telling his or her exact name. Next would be offer a compliment. Okay, you say something nice about the person and then that will ignite a good conversation. Next, how to be an active participant. Oh, I'm sorry about that. But the first one would be ask good questions. So it takes at least two people to have a great conversation. Take note, good questions. Do not ask questions that are not how do you call this one, that are not proper. Next, we have practice being an active listener. Okay, so how do we show that we are being active? Of course, you pay attention, eye contact, you shake your head, you nod, you comment also, hindi yung nandun ka na lang nakikinig na parang patay. Next, we have be genuine. Kasi sabi natin kanina, you offer a compliment, sinasabi mo, oh, napakaganda ng hair mo, ganda ng boses mo and all, pero hindi naman pala totoo yun. So, when you say genuine, whatever compliment you offer should be true. Dapat nakikita talaga sa kanya. Next, we have find common good. So, you cannot have a good conversation with someone na hindi kayo pareho ng interest. So, say for example, nagkukwento siya about basketball and here comes ikaw naman mga Barbie, mga fairy tales naman. So, that will not result to a good conversation. So, you try also to engage yourself doon sa topic na interest nung kausap mo. Next, stay on the current news or pop culture. Baka naman nagkukwento siya ng mga napapanood pero ikaw ang kinukwento mo pa rin yung napapanood nung 1900s. So, of course, hindi na siya makaka-relate. Next, we have monitor your body language. Kasi baka kung ano-anong mga gestures ang pinapakita mo, baka wala kang eye contact and all. And then the last thing would be avoid oversharing. Sa sobrang madada ka, sa sobrang dami mo ng sinabi, pati password ng padlock ng bahay nyo, pati titulo, nasabi mo na lahat, pati katago-tagong sekreto. So, oversharing is also not good in conversation. So, what benefit do we get from great conversation? Bakit kailangan pag nagkakaroon tayo ng conversation with other people, it should be great? Of course, because number one, there is conversation strengthens your personal relationship. So imagine a house na wala man lang conversation. Imagine a home na hindi nag-uusap-usap. Of course, the relationship will not be strengthened. And of course, there would be a doubt, family ba talaga to? Since there's no communication, there's no conversation, at all. Next, we have conversation with coworkers improves your work relationship because, as a matter of fact, there's a research na nagsasabing kapag nakakausap mo, nakakapag-establish ka ng relationship with your workmates, nagiging mas productive ka. Kasi may nakakausap ka, when you are angry, nakakapag-vent ka to someone, ganyan. Next, we have in-depth conversation makes one feel happier. So, mas na giging positive yung mood kapag meron kang ka-conversation. And then next, smiling while conversing with someone improve the mood. So, it's actually similar to the first one. So, that's all about conversation. So, conversation is not as easy as we think. It could be the most familiar and most direct, but of course, you need to consider several etiquettes that will yield or that will result into a good conversation. So, lesson 2 would be formal and informal meeting. So, what's the difference between meeting and conversation? Kapag ka kasi meeting, it's the coming together of two or three or more people that have been convened for the purpose of achieving a common goal. Take note of the word common goal through verbal interaction, sharing information, or reaching agreement. So, meron silang common goal. And of course, yung mga involved sa meeting, yung mga participants as well as presider, would have a common position, ganyan. They belong to one organization. And take note that meeting can be done face-to-face or virtually. Now, there are three components of meeting. We have the content, interaction, and structure. Ano nga ba yung content? Content, this is the knowledge, information, experiences, expertise, opinions, ideas, and attitudes, as well as expectations that each individual brings in the meeting. We also have interaction. Interaction is this is the sharing, this is the participation, the listening, and the trust involved in meeting. And the last one, we have the structure. Structure is the way in which both the information and the participants are organized to achieve the purpose or objectives of the meeting. So, kung kanina sa conversation, meron tayong social and meron tayong transactional. Dito naman sa meeting, we have the formal meeting and the informal meeting. Anong pinagkaiba? Pag sinabi po natin na formal meeting, ito ay pre-planned gathering of three or more people who have assembled for the purpose of achieving a common goal through verbal interaction. Ito yung predetermined ang topic, may nakaset na objectives, merong formal notice or merong memo. Ano naman ang informal meeting? Ang informal meeting ay less heavily planned. So, hindi masyadong plano. Say, for example, naisip lang nila ngayon o mag-meeting tayo dyan sa malapit na coffee shop. That is informal meeting. Now, we have here lesson 3. Yan, para mabilis tayo. Lesson 3 is all about interview. Okay. Interview is probably one of the tasks that individuals, particularly students and graduates, could not get rid because this is the most important step they take in job search journey. Ano nga ba ang interview? Interview is essentially structured communication where one participant asks questions and the other provides answer. So there are two individuals involved. The first one is interviewer and interviewee. Si interviewer, siya yung nag-a-ask ng question and interviewee, siya yung nagpro-provide ng answer to the questions. And interviews are usually face-to-face and in-person, although meron din tayong tinatawag na telephone interview. I will discuss that later. Okay, what are the context of interviews? The first one, we have employment. Okay, ito yung very common na tinatawag din nating job interview. Ito yung interview na nagkakaroon ng asking and answering question for the purpose of having a job. for the purpose of assessing the qualification of a certain candidate para sa isang trabaho. Next, we have psychology. Psychology interview, ito naman yung methods and techniques that are applied by professionals in order for those professionals or doctors or psychologists to understand and help their parents. Number 3 would be research. So, nagkakaroon ng interview in research in order for them to gather data, in order for them to survey the needed data. They ask people who could be great source of information. Next, we have journalism and other media. Of course, nakikita natin kapag merong mga journalist, nag-i-interview sila, nag-a-ask sila ng questions dun sa mga tao na pwedeng magbigay sa kanila ng information. Ngayon naman, meron tayong types of interview styles. Number 1 would be one-to-one. One-to-one interview, as the term implies. Of course, there are only 2 people involved dito, the candidate and the interviewer. Next, we have panel interview. Panel interview naman, group of interviewers. There's only one interviewee and there is a group of interviewers. So, each one, nagpre-prepare sila ng questions and they listen, and all of them will listen, to the answers of the interviewee. Next, we have telephone interview, as the term implies also. It is also referred as pre-screening interview. So, this is very cost-effective because the interviewer and the interviewee do not need to proceed to a certain place in order to conduct the interview. Next, we have structured or planned interview. When we say structured, this is one of the most common interview held all over the world. Yung naka-prepare na yung set of questions and usually they have the same sets of question, kaya nakakapag-prepare na yung interviewee. Kapag unstructured naman, usually there's only one question that's being prepared, and then the next questions would depend on the response of the interviewee. Meron din tayong behavioral. This is an interview conducted to assume about an applicant's future behavior and performance based on his or her past behavior. Next, we have case interview. Case interview and yung number 9 natin, which is situational interview, are almost the same. So, yung interviewer, nagtatanong lang siya, nagpapa-imagine siya ng situation or cases, and then, tinitignan niya kung anong magiging reaction ni interviewee. Next, we have competency interview. Competency interview is usually job-related skill test. Parang iti-test lang nila how deep is your knowledge, how skilled are you in the certain area, so what's the level of your performance, so something like that. Next, we have the stress interview. This is considered as a great option earlier to detect how a candidate respond to stressful situations. But today, hiring processes have become more practical and sophisticated, and stress interviews are already rarely conducted. Next, we have serial interview. From the word serial, series, okay, hindi lang one, kundi meron siyang 2 or more interviews with the same candidate. So, ito yung pre-interview, and then meron na namang next interview, and then meron na namang next. So, that is serial interview. Next, we have lunch interviews, as the term implies again. One or more interviewers take the candidate to lunch to test his or her social skills. Ayan, bakit dinadala sa lunch? So, para makita nila to verify the answers of the interviewee. Kung ganun din ba yung behavior niya, ganun ba talaga yung reaction niya, something like that. Okay, we have different interview etiquette. Magbabanggit lang ako ng ilan, pero as in, napakadami. Number 1, we have avoid cracking jokes with the interviewer. So, interview is usually is done in a formal manner. Next, chewing gum during interview is childish. So you should not be chewing gum during the interview. Next, we have take care of your pitch and tone. Be polite but firm. Stay calm. Another thing, do not be late. Another thing, once you're done with the interview, do not forget to thank the interviewer. So, yun lang yung mga interview etiquette. This is very practical naman, the proper or the right things to do when you are attending an interview. You should be at your best, both in physical, in social being, in emotional being, and in all aspects of your lives. The last one would be public speaking. So you better listen to this because I included this in your examination. So public speaking is the process or act of performing a speech to a live audience. So when you say public speaking, merong nakikinig habang ikaw ay nagda-deliver ng speech. So there are elements of public speaking. I included this in your examination. Speaker. This is one of the most important element. Speaker is of course the source of the message. Next we have the message. Message is refers to everything that the speaker says, both verbally and bodily. So meron din siyang content, style, and structure. Next we have audience. Audience are the listeners. Channel naman, we have ano tong mga to? The nonverbal channel, the visual channel, the auditory channel. Next, we have feedback. Ano ang feedback? Feedback is the process by which the speaker receives a response. Feedback is response. Then next, we have noise. We have the external noise and the internal noise. We have laughter, temperature for ventilation, obstacles, and all that. Next, we have place or situation. So, it's just the location, the venue. So, those are the elements of public speaking. Next, we have the different types. I also included this in your examination. Ano ang demonstrative, ano ang entertaining, ano ang informative. So, you better listen. So, when we say demonstrative, the focus is on educating the audience on a specific subject. From the word demo. So, you demonstrate on how to do something. Say, for example, how to write a letter, how to cook pinakbet. Next, we have entertaining speech. Of course, the purpose of this is to entertain the crowds. It usually contains funny stories, illustration, basic humor, and of course, they are very short. Next, we have informative speech. The purpose of this is to give or provide new information to the audience. Next, persuasive speech. The purpose of this is to convince the audience to believe your opinion. Next, we have oratorical. Oratorical speech is usually given at special ceremonies such as graduation, ribbon cutting, inauguration, like that. Next, we have motivational speech. Kasali na naman to sa exam. Pag tinanong ko, self-improvement of the audience, motivational speech ang sagot doon. Next, we have forensic speech. Forensic speech is the speakers perfect their skills while being supervised by experienced speakers. So it is usually associated with students who seek to hone their craft while practicing at the same time. Next, we have debate speech. Debate are not meant to persuade the other party to switch side. Instead, i-justify lang ni speaker yung kanyang opinion. Magpre-present lang siya ng evidence. Next, we have special occasion speech. Ito yung, okay, magbigay ka ng message mo kasi ganito, ikaw yung very, very important person sa kanyang buhay, sa birthday, sa kasal. So, those are special occasion speech. So, how do we become better at public speaking? So, parang isa sa kinatatakutan ng lahat is to speak in front of the crowd or in front of live audience. Number 1 would be you write an effective speech. You write first before you could speak it. So you work on writing a well-organized, engaging speech. especially if you are starting. Next, we have overcome the fear of speaking or the stage fright or tinatawag din nating glossophobia. So, you have to overcome that. Next, you have to practice speaking or you practice your speech. Next, after you did this three, you're done with this three, you give the speech. So, how do we characterize an effective public speaker? Number one is he or she has confidence. So, when you say you have confidence, you believe in your ability. Kailangan yon. Kailangan maging confident ka. It's natural to be nervous. It's natural to have jitters, especially when you're excited or when it's your first time. But be yourself and believe in your ability. Next, we have passion. You have to love what you're doing. You have to be in the words that you are speaking to the audience. Next, we have be yourself. So sometimes it's okay that you have idols, you have models, but you don't have to be someone else on stage. Just be yourself, who you are. So you have to um, use the natural voice, the natural you. Next, we have the voice modulation. So, if you want to be an engaging speaker, you have to avoid talking in a tone that seems to be well rehearsed. Because sometimes you have to monitor your speed, you have to monitor the volume of your voice. Next, we have keep it short and sweet. Okay, short and sweet is direct. If it's 30 minutes, if they give you 30 minutes to speak and you feel like you have spoken everything, then you don't have to force yourself na magbigay ng 30 minutes. For as long as you've given the substance, that's it. Next, connect with your audience. There's this what we call conditioning. You condition yourself as well as your audience. Next, we have paint a picture through storytelling. Allow your audience to imagine. So you include stories of your own experiences, giving a comprehensive description para makarelate sila. Next, we have repetition. So at the end of your speech, you could sum up whatever you have shared so that they could repeat it. So, but not necessarily repeating every word. And then the last one would be don't just practice, practice and practice because practicing will help you make feel more confident and appear more authentic and creating a better opportunity for you to connect with your audience, which is in the end the ultimate goal of public speaking. Why is it public speaking? The goal is to connect with your audience and to convey whatever you wish to convey to your audience. So that is all about speaking skill. If there are concepts you did not understand, please feel free to drop your questions in our group chat and do not share to anyone this video as this is for educational purposes only. Okay, thank you so much for listening. You please review and listen to this because I included. Do not also forward the video because I dropped down, I indicated some of the test items that you can see later on in your exam. Thank you so much.